installment of our Federal Opportunity Zone talks with Dr. Ed Smith. Ed is our Federal Opportunity Zone Manager here at Invest Atlanta and is coordinating all of our Federal Opportunity Zone programs. This week, Dr. Smith is going to sit down with John Moy from the Urban League. He is a director of the Office for Policy and Legislative Affairs at the Urban League here in Atlanta. In this capacity, he leads the team's efforts to advance the Urban League's legislative and policy agenda. And I think what is going to be most of note today and interest to people is that the Urban League is taking a leading role in fighting for federal resources that should come to the state of Georgia and to Atlanta. So we'll be very interested to hear his update on that. He's working very closely with Atlanta City Council, the Georgia State Legislature, and other key stakeholders to ensure that the League's priorities and programs to build stronger communities and a vibrant economy for all of the city of Atlanta. I'd like to give a special shout out today to the Urban League's Nancy Flake Johnson. Nancy Flake and John have been real strong allies and partners for Invest Atlanta, and is committed, just as we are, to economic mobility and prosperity for all Atlantans, and we're working very closely together. So today you'll get a deeper dive into how the Urban League is helping to create that stronger Atlanta and the efforts that they're doing right now to help Atlanta get through the COVID-19 crisis. So without further ado, Ed and John, let you guys take it off. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Nathan. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, John. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to our audience for tuning in right now. You could be viewing a wide variety of webinars and listening to podcasts, but thankfully you've decided to spend your afternoon with Invest Atlanta's Federal Opportunity Zone initiative. For those of you who are seeking more information on our Federal Opportunity Zone initiative, I encourage you to visit atlopportunityzones.com, where you can learn about our initiative to help facilitate investment to the city of Atlanta's most underserved communities, how we are working with social impact investors to help finance mission-aligned projects, how we are working with community organizations such as the Urban League to conduct the necessary outreach to ensure that when additional investment comes into our communities, that the investment is supportive and inclusive and can lead to economic mobility for those living and working in Atlanta's Federal Opportunity Zones. There are over 86,000 residents in Atlanta's Federal Opportunity Zones and over 1,500 businesses in Atlanta's Federal Opportunity Zones. So it's very important that we at Invest Atlanta work with our community partners, such as the Urban League, to promote the social impact outcomes that can lead to success for all Atlantans. So with that being said, today we have Mr. John Moy from the Urban League to discuss his background, his role and position at the Urban League, describe what the Urban League does in general, and we will then pivot to some of the programs available and what both we at Invest Atlanta and what the Urban League is doing to further support our constituencies in the COVID-19 crisis. So with that being said, John, thank you for tuning in and coming on to our webinar. Perhaps could you, for those of us who have not met you, and I know that's a very small population, but could you please offer a little bit on your background and how you got into this line of work?
Sure. I always say it begins with a little guy from Queens by the name of Mario Cuomo, who was the former governor of New York, and was 23 years old, got hired by the governor at 23, and the rest was history. I mean, just always had a passion for government, whether it was in college or in high school or whatever, and just really got started working hard to do that. Always fascinated in terms of public policy, a little bit nerdy on some of the policy stuff, and so spent the better part of my career in government. And then I transitioned about maybe 7 or 8 years ago. I left New York and packed up and left the current governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, and decided to come to Atlanta. I thought Atlanta is a great place to sort of reboot and restart, and really paired up with a lady by the name of Nancy Flake Johnson, a dynamic leader here in our community of the Urban League of Greater Atlanta. And the rest really is history. And certainly have been blessed and fortunate to work with her there at the Urban League. And together we've done some great, amazing things. But let me step back to talk about the Urban League of Greater Atlanta. I wear this pin. If you can see it, that means this year we are 100 years old. And we were created in March of 2020. And March of 1920, I should say. And so this is our centennial. And I was often talk to her, and I said, it's funny because I thought this year would be a very celebratory year in terms of, really reaching out and having, different receptions to sort of celebrate what we're doing. But here we are in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of an economic crisis, unlike which we haven't seen since the Great Depression, and really doing what the Urban League was created to do, which was to help and empower people. And I'm so fortunate and privileged to be a part of this team. Again, I'm 53 years old, married to a wonderful lady. We have 5 kids, 1 grandchild, and I'm privileged and to be with you, friend. So thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks. And then could you please describe your role at the Urban League? What is it, your areas of responsibility, and how are you working to promote economic mobility even prior to our COVID situation? I know we're going to talk about COVID, but generally, what is your role and capacity that you serve at the Urban League?
Sure, it's a very broad portfolio. Initially, when I came into the Urban League, I was working on workforce development exclusively, which wasn't too hard to do, but considering we were in a very robust economy. But Ms. Johnson shifted and said, listen, I'd like you to move into the area of policy and legislation. So she's asked me to do that. And so I've been working as the Director of Policy and Legislative Affairs for almost 2 or 3 years now. Really immersed in policy, interfacing with our federal representatives, interfacing with state and local representatives, whether it's the city council or members of Congress, and really trying to shape public policy. As you know, Ed, public policy shapes everything that we do, whether it's the Invest Atlanta itself or whether it's the Urban League, all of it's public policy. And so I'm certainly happy that she had the foresight to do it. We've made some incredible inroads in terms of not only protecting the communities that we serve, but looking forward in terms of really trying to shape what the future is certainly going to look like. So that's my day-to-day right now, and particularly in this environment, just trying to interface with our folks to make sure that we're protected.
So when you're engaging with some of these policy stakeholders on the state and the federal level, can you describe the types of conversations that you're having, the policy issues that are near and dear to the Urban League, and the direction that you'd like to see some of these policymakers engage in as they continue to formulate strategies to promote advancement in urban communities across the United States, particularly Atlanta?
Sure. So let's just take a step forward, if I can. It's no secret that on June 11th, the state legislature is going to come back into session under very difficult circumstances. The state of Georgia is facing a severe budget shortfall, as we know. And prior to COVID, the governor had announced 4% across the board cuts. This was back in January when they came back into session. The state was about $100 million in the hole then. And now we know that the projections are much more grim than what we anticipated. So we've been talking to the members of the state legislature now. We know that the projections that the governor has asked for now is an additional 14% across the board on top of the 4%. And as you know, that could be certainly very devastating to the communities that we serve. So we've been proactive. We haven't waited at all. We've certainly taken a look at that, at the budget line by line, agency by agency, and talking to committee chairmen and on the House and Senate side to make sure that when they gavel back into session in 2 or 3 weeks, that we're ready to go, and that we're going to certainly fight as hard as we can to make sure that our communities are protected in terms of those budget cuts.
Okay, great. So when we begin to unpack what is occurring in Atlanta's opportunity zones, and I know that the scope of the Urban League includes what is even broader than Atlanta's 26 federal opportunity zones, we'd like to remind everybody that there are really 2 constituencies or 2 lines of thought that we have when we are engaging. So one is the residents and community members, and secondly would be the the business community. So let's split that for this conversation. I know that there are a wide variety of programs offered by the Urban League to support those living and working in opportunity zones and throughout Atlanta. So let's start with the residents. What type of programs or support services does the Urban League have to support those living in Atlanta's federal opportunity zones and living in Atlanta in general?
Well, listen, we have a plethora of services. You know, the Urban League sits on 5 pillars. One, we're here to provide assistance for people looking for careers. It's no longer about jobs, Ed. It's about careers. And we're working aggressively to do that in partnership with local community colleges, in partnership with a bevy of corporations. That's number one. Number two, we assist young people between the ages of 16 to 24 because I have 5 kids and I know whether they're 30 or whether they're 18, they still need assistance. And so we do that. We help entrepreneurs. People say, look, John, I want to be a captain of industry. I want to be the captain of my future. I don't want to have a job or a career. I want to create a job and certainly create careers. And so we do that. Then we help certainly returning citizens. And then we help folks who want to purchase their own home. So to answer your question directly, we have a ton of programs in terms of whether it's assisting people with getting back to school, re-engineering their skills, certainly soft skills training, all types of programs at the Urban League to really help people. Career pathways, we have that in terms of looking at what are the high demand sectors right now, whether it's healthcare or hospitality. Hopefully that's going to come back in our great state. And some other high demand areas, certainly construction. You know, what areas can we find people in terms of getting productive careers? And more importantly, if Ms. Johnson was on this call, if Nancy was on this call, she said, John, make sure you talk about what it takes right now. So we know prior to COVID, we know it takes about $28 an hour for a family of 3 to survive. And that's not a tremendous amount of money, but if we can get people to that $28 an hour so that they can sustain themselves and have a little bit left over to provide their families. And we know there are certain careers that can do that. So we're constantly reinforcing that and fighting like heck to get them there.
Oh, perfect. Thank you for offering that overview. So I have a follow-up question there. If I were a small business owner located in one of Atlanta's opportunity zones or an entrepreneur, and I'm engaging in the first phase of the business development process, and I wanted to reach out to the Urban League, what could I reach out to the Urban League for? You mentioned entrepreneurship support. Part of our audience, we've noticed a good number of our audience members are from the local business community. So how can they use the Urban League in addition to what you've already said?
Absolutely. So we have a smart young guy by the name of Mark Parham. He's the director of our Entrepreneurial Training Center. And we provide a plethora of services just for businesses alone. And I also wanted to add that recently we received grants and funding from UPS, from Truist Bank, and from the City of Atlanta to provide supportive services and technical services to businesses. So now is a perfect time to come to the Urban League. We also have a very robust relationship with the SBA. So whether you're thinking about opening your own business, starting a business plan, access to capital, technical assistance, or John, how do I even start? How do I develop an LLC or a limited partnership or whatever it is that you're seeking to do? We will walk you through those steps every step of the way. We have webinars and seminars in-house and now remotely, constantly talking to our folks, and particularly for minority women-owned businesses, it's always a tough road to hoe. We know that. So we go out of the way. And then we have partnerships with chambers of commerce to get them the assistance that they need. And these are free services. It's not like we're charging people to do this. This is stuff that our doors are always open to do that. So constantly training our folks to get there. And more importantly, talking up the opportunity that you have now in the within the city of Atlanta in terms of opportunity zones. It's a great time to really, if you're thinking about, even during this hard economic time, of certainly investing in Invest Atlanta, particularly within the opportunity zone. So, we're constantly talking that up.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So as a brief summation, if you are a small business owner or entrepreneur who is transitioning due to COVID-19, the Urban League can be a good, if not to put words in your mouth, John, but it sounds like the Urban League can be a one-stop shop for those that are seeking information on how to start their business, the formulation of business plans, the providing of support, identification of alternative capital sources that can help support economic mobility and job creation. I also heard you mention job creation, and I think you said that was one of the pillars of the Urban League.
That's correct.
So, to all of our business owners and entrepreneurs that are tuning in, we would encourage you to reach out to the Urban League and take advantage of the resources offered in order to support your business plans. So thank you for that, John. So given that we're on this, there's a reason why we are on this webinar. As you know, we have hosted a number of live Opportunity Zone events due to the current recommendations and guidance that has been offered to us. We are social distancing and conducting webinars.
Right.
But as you know, the COVID-19 pandemic has not only impacted the residents, but the businesses that are located in Atlanta's Opportunity Zones and located in Atlanta. So one thing that we've been doing on our webinars has been to discuss COVID-19 and how is the Urban League transitioning? How is the support that the Urban League can provide to residents transitioning due to COVID-19? And what is the Urban League doing to support businesses as a result of COVID-19? So can you speak on COVID-19 briefly, John?
Absolutely. And let me say something. So Ms. Johnson certainly didn't waste any time at all. We snapped into immediate action. She's been appointed by Governor Kemp on a task force. So certainly take a look at this very difficult situation. And in addition to that, we've also put together a statewide coalition of some of the leading organizations in our state to take this on directly. Some of the issues that we've been talking about, which is our national issues, to making sure that our people have access in terms of being tested, to make sure that our folks have adequate health care. Healthcare was an issue prior to COVID. Imagine now, and making sure that our hospitals have the necessary resources that the hospitals need. I mean, you never think about that, but hospitals have been under an inordinate amount of strain right now. In addition to that, fighting for our businesses, fighting for making sure that the funding is certainly coming down the pike. And even with, as you all know, whether it's with PPP or some other SBA programs, which is great, we applaud that. We very thankful that we were able to get these resources. But even with that, there's been some difficulty. Initially, some of our folks didn't have access to these funds. The businesses just weren't structured. You thought, I have a relationship with Ed Smith Bank for the last 35 years, and I'm going to walk in there and apply for PPP, and everything's going to be okay. Well, that wasn't the case. If you didn't have, if your business certainly didn't have the adequate paperwork that was certainly required. And many of our businesses were rejected in terms of accessing those funds and that needed capital, certainly to get through. So on all fronts, particularly on COVID, we've been fighting very, very hard. We've had some outbreaks, as you know, in certain parts of our state. And so we've been on the phone every day trying to mitigate. Our goal is to make sure that our folks are tested and to reduce the rate of infection. And God forbid, if someone is infected, to make sure that they have those resources that they need to get back to a speedy health and recovery as quickly as possible.
Oh, perfect. Thank you for offering that insight. And that is a perfect segue into some of the work that we are seeing here in Atlanta as it relates to potential Opportunity Zone projects and potential Opportunity Zone investment opportunities. The healthcare sector is very critical right now in servicing those living and working in Opportunity Zones. We have seen a number of healthcare entities and establishments begin to explore whether they're expanding or growing in their capacity, how Opportunity Zone, particularly Opportunity Zone investment, can fit into the capital stack and how it can further support those economic development outcomes. So, John, thank you for offering that overview on your work given COVID-19. One of the questions that I had, I received an email not too long ago about some of the work that the Urban League was doing as it relates to the upcoming census and how that could support those living and working in opportunity zones. I believe that that was one of the pushes. So could you describe some of the work related to the census and the importance of that in our communities here in Atlanta?
Sure, we have a very aggressive push. Certainly, the Urban League is it's an affiliate. We have 90 affiliates with the national, as a member of the National Urban League. So we've been pushing this for we knew the census was coming, particularly in our interaction with the state legislature. The National Urban League has really given all of our affiliates direction, but certainly on the ground, whether it's in partnership with the city of Atlanta or DeKalb County or Fulton County, or certainly other organizations, and with the Census Bureau itself. We've had great webinars and meetings in terms of getting our people hired by the census at the time, and certainly making sure that those forms were going out at the right time. We were also concerned, we voiced concern in terms of a huge digital divide. There's still a digital divide in this country, and particularly in our community. And as you know, Ed, a portion of the census is they're actually tabulating, receiving information online. So we were concerned that some of our folks wouldn't have access to those, to that technology to be able to do that. And we fought very aggressively to make sure that those issues were addressed. We've been on the radio. We've had, Ms. Johnson has been on the radio and on different social media platforms, telling our people about the importance of the census. And why is it important? Because we know everything's connected to the census, whether it's precious federal resources or whether it's reapportionment. Members of congressional districts are drawn as a result of the census. School funding is allocated as a result of the census. And the amount for every person that doesn't complete it, there are hundreds or thousands of dollars that are allocated somewhere else. And so it's not just about money, but it's also about empowering our communities to make sure that they have the representation that they need. So for us, for the last year or more, it's been census, census, census. And we're going to keep talking about that until the cows come home. But it's so very important this year to make sure that our people are counted. We have to be heard and we have to be counted. And we can only be heard if we're counted. So there's where we are. And for all of you who haven't filled out your census, make sure you fill it out and get it in as soon as possible.
Okay, perfect. That was the question that I was going to ask. If you receive something in the mail and it's been sitting on the counter and it had Census 2020 on it, for those listening in the audience, you can still fill out your census forms and be counted in your community.
That's right. And at some point, prior to COVID, what they were going to do, they were going to start sending out people to knock on doors. I'm not sure where they are now in terms of post-COVID, what the crisis is now. But if you take a look at their schedule, at this point now, those forms should have been coming back, and they're certainly scheduled to sort of dispatch people to go door to door, to knock on doors to gather additional information. But don't wait for that. If you can do it online, go online, fill everything out now and get it in. And if you have difficulty doing that, contact the Urban League. We're here to help you to get that done. And also to add, Ed, census by law, this is the information is confidential. I mean, it's sealed information. I believe for a period of about 72 years. And so you and I, Ed, will be long gone by the time that next information.
I mean, in my vegetables, I might be there.
My vegetables and my Wheaties, friend. That's right. You got that right. But so it's confidential information, and you should be rest assured about that too, as well.
Perfect. As we start to wrap up, we've received a couple of questions from our viewing audience. One of the ones that's been elevated is, can you please speak on how the Urban League can work with a diverse constituency, particularly the Latino community, Latino businesses? How can members of a wide variety of constituencies and diverse backgrounds, or how has the Urban League worked with the diversity of our Atlanta community?
Listen, look, here's the deal. As far as I'm concerned, as far as Ms. Johnson is concerned, as far as the Urban League is concerned, it's a gorgeous mosaic. E pluribus unum, out of many one, right? So we don't distinguish at all. We have a wonderful relationship here in Atlanta with our Latino community and a growing Asian American community. And so we're constantly partnering with our partners, whether it's on business issues or have a robust relationship with the Hispanic Business Chamber of Commerce. And so I would encourage people, our doors are open to everyone. And we don't turn anyone away. And so if there's any services that folks need, or whether it's technical assistance or assistance with their kids or our doors are open. Come knock on the door, knock, call, scream. But we don't discriminate there. We don't. And we believe that, particularly in this environment, particularly when you take a look at other communities that have been adversely affected for whatever reason. We had a great relationship with some real other organizations. We talk all the time that we have to work together, that there are strength in numbers. And so we constantly keep our doors open to whoever knocks on that door. We turn nobody away.
And it's my understanding, John, that there are Spanish-speaking members in the Urban League, or Spanish-speaking coaches and consultants that work with the Urban League.
It is. It is. We are as diverse as the communities that we serve. We have people on our team from all corners of this globe. And so whether it's we have French-speaking people who certainly speak Spanish, and I'm probably, if we had lunch, some other languages as well. And so absolutely, we absolutely do. Yep.
Okay, perfect. I see one more question here as we wrap up. It's been asked, how can those in the viewing audience get involved? As mentioned from Invest Atlanta, we have a wide variety of programs and services that can support mission-aligned economic development outcomes, which include job creation, not only job creation, but careers, as you noted, John, careers, jobs that lead to economic mobility, the development of affordable housing, mixed-use projects in areas that have been historically underinvested and underserved, the addressing of deserts, right? Food deserts, medical deserts, et cetera. So to learn more about how you can get involved with the programs and initiatives offered by Invest Atlanta, I encourage the viewing audience to visit investatlanta.com. And if the goal is to promote economic activity in Atlanta's 26 federal opportunity zones, I encourage the viewing audience to visit atlopportunityzones.com. If you are unsure as to whether a location is located in an opportunity zone, you can click on the mapping feature and put in your address and determine whether or not that particular location is located in an opportunity zone. You can also identify other place-based resources there. So again, investatlanta.com for a broad overview of the tools and resources available through Invest Atlanta. atlopportunityzones.com for an overview of the Opportunity Zone Initiative. And for the Urban League, John, what would be the best way for those in our viewing audience to find out more information about the Urban League?
Sure, go right to our website, which is www.ulgatl.org. That's www.ulgatl.org. Or call me. And my phone number is 404-809-5476. That's 404-809-5476. And my name is John Moy.
Okay, perfect.
Right.
John, as we wrap up, any closing comments or thoughts for our audience?
Be vigilant. This is a very difficult time for our country, a very, very difficult time for our people. And be informed. Read everything that you can read. Make sure you vote, show up, be engaged, ask questions, hard questions, and more importantly, help each other. Help your neighbor, call your neighbor, make sure that each one helps the other one and that we're okay. And guess what, Ed? We've been here before and we're going to get through it again. We're going to be okay. We're going to be okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, John, for taking, I know you have a crazy schedule. Thank you for taking time out of your day to speak with our audience. We'll be in touch. We'll make sure to circulate those websites and other information after the broadcast. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you, friend. Thank you. Bye-bye.